Sure. Here's the first section, written with precision and focus, keeping the word count in mind. Zenara had never been this nervous about a routine check. As a junior engineer aboard the interspecies diplomatic vessel Harmony's Call, she had handled far more complicated tasks than inspecting a human crewmember's room for faulty environmental controls. Yet there was something about humans, their reputation for unpredictable behavior, their unique physiology, that made her hesitant. She took a deep breath and activated the door override. The room was dimly lit, with faint blue light from the environmental stabilizers casting long shadows across the walls. Zenara stepped in cautiously, her long, slender tail brushing against the edge of the doorway. The air inside was warmer than expected, a sign that the temperature regulators might indeed need recalibration. She activated her scanning device and began a sweep, her large, luminous eyes scanning every corner of the room. Her gaze landed on the bed, and her heart skipped a beat. Alex, the human she had heard so much about, was sprawled across it, sound asleep. But it wasn't his sleeping posture that caught her attention, it was his state of undress. Zenara froze, her mind racing. Humans were known for their casual approach to nudity, but she hadn't expected this level of openness. Alex lay on his back, one arm draped lazily over his chest, while the rest of him was completely exposed, save for a thin sheet barely covering his legs. Her gaze flickered to his tool, as her people referred to it in hushed whispers, and her cheeks flushed a deep shade of green, a telltale sign of embarrassment among her kind. What was she supposed to do? Protocol dictated she should leave immediately, but her innate curiosity got the better of her. Zenara had always been fascinated by humans, their strange behaviors, and the mystique surrounding their biology. This was a rare opportunity to observe one up close. She inched closer, her scanning device held tightly in one hand. Her inner monologue was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. This isn't appropriate. But it's not like he'll notice. What if he wakes up? No, he won't wake up. Humans are heavy sleepers, right? Her tail flicked nervously as she approached the bed, her wide eyes darting between Alex's face and the scanner's display. The scanner beeped softly, indicating a heat fluctuation near the environmental controls. Relieved to have a distraction, Zenara stepped back toward the wall panel. But her nerves got the better of her, and she bumped into a small table, knocking over a half-full cup of what smelled like stale human coffee. The noise shattered the silence, and Alex stirred. His eyes blinked open, squinting in the dim light. Zenara froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Alex groaned softly, his hand reaching to rub his face before he realized he wasn't alone. His eyes locked onto her, and for a moment neither of them moved. Zenara? He said, his voice thick with sleep. His gaze followed hers, and as realization dawned, he scrambled to grab the sheet and pull it over himself. What are you doing here? I was just, performing a maintenance check. Zenara stammered, her voice higher pitched than usual. She clutched the scanner like a shield, her tail wrapping around her leg in embarrassment. A maintenance check? Alex's face turned red as he adjusted the sheet around his waist. Couldn't you have waited until I was, awake? And dressed? I didn't know you'd be here, she blurted out. Your schedule said you were on duty. Well, obviously I'm not, Alex said, his voice a mix of irritation and embarrassment. He ran a hand through his messy hair, his expression softening slightly when he saw how flustered she was. Look, it's fine. Just maybe knock next time, okay? Yes, of course. Absolutely. Zenara backed toward the door, her tail knocking over another object in her haste. She winced, muttering an apology before the door slid shut behind her. As she stood in the corridor, her face still burning, Zenara couldn't help but replay the scene in her mind. She had read about humans and their peculiarities, but this was beyond anything she'd imagined. Despite her embarrassment, a small part of her was intrigued. What made humans so unbothered by their own vulnerability? She shook her head, trying to push the thoughts aside. This was going to be a long shift, and she needed to focus. But as she walked away, she couldn't help but glance back at the closed door, a mix of curiosity and confusion swirling in her mind. The corridors of the ship buzzed with faint vibrations, a steady hum of machinery keeping the Harmony's call afloat in the vastness of space. Zenara paced in the maintenance bay, replaying the incident in her mind for the 100th time. She knew it was irrational to dwell on it, but her embarrassment wouldn't subside. Worse, she couldn't shake the image of Alex lying there, so relaxed, so vulnerable. The sheer audacity of humans baffled her. Did they not feel the slightest sense of modesty? Her friend Trivex, a fellow crew member from her homeworld, wandered into the bay. Trivex's translucent, violet skin shimmered under the bay's bright lights as he tilted his head, studying Zenara's fidgety behavior. "You look troubled," he observed. "Did something happen?" Zenara hesitated, then sighed. "I walked in on the human, Alex, while he was resting." Trivex's eyes widened, and his frills flared slightly, a clear sign of alarm. "Resting? Do you mean sleeping?" "Yes, but he wasn't wearing anything," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He was completely uncovered." Trivex gasped dramatically, his frills fluttering. "And you survived? Incredible! I've heard rumors about their anatomy. Did it look dangerous?" Zenara groaned, covering her face with her hands. "No! It's not dangerous. It's just strange. They don't seem to care about modesty the way we do." "Well, of course not. They're humans," Trivex said matter-of-factly. "I heard they use their, tools for communication rituals." "What?" Zenara blinked in disbelief. "That's absurd." Trivex shrugged. "That's just what I heard. Maybe it's how they assert dominance or signal readiness for combat." "Dominance? Combat?" Zenara couldn't believe what she was hearing. "No, Trivex. It's nothing like that. It's just biology." Trivex squinted at her. "Are you sure? You've seen it, haven't you? You're practically an expert now." Zenara's tail lashed in frustration. "I am not an expert. I was there for maintenance, not to study human anatomy." Trivex chuckled, his frills twitching with amusement. "Well, either way, you've got a story to tell. I doubt anyone else on this ship has been that close to a human in such a state." Zenara groaned again, but a small part of her couldn't deny the intrigue behind Trivex's words. It wasn't just about the incident, it was about Alex himself. There was something oddly fascinating about him. Humans were so different from her kind, yet there was a warmth, an openness to them that she couldn't quite put into words. Later that day, Zenara found herself in the mess hall, seated across from Alex. She hadn't planned to talk to him, but he waved her over, and politeness dictated she accept. Alex seemed relaxed, as if the earlier incident hadn't rattled him in the slightest. "So, about earlier," he began, his tone light-hearted. "Let's just pretend that didn't happen, yeah?" Zenara nodded quickly. "Agreed. It was an unfortunate coincidence." "Unfortunate? I think it's hilarious," Alex said, chuckling. "You looked like you'd seen a ghost." Zenara's cheeks flushed green again. "It was unexpected, that's all. My people are not accustomed to such casual displays." Alex smirked. "Well, it's not like I planned it. I didn't think anyone would be barging into my quarters unannounced. I was on duty," Zenara protested. "It's standard procedure to perform checks when the crew isn't present." "Fair enough," Alex said, taking a bite of his food. "But you've got to admit, it's kind of funny. I mean, you're all serious and professional, and then, bam, welcome to Human Anatomy 101. Zenara's tail twitched, and she tried to change the subject. "Humans are unique in many ways. Your anatomy is only one of them." "Unique, huh? I'll take that as a compliment," Alex said, grinning. Despite herself, Zenara found her lips curving into a small smile. There was something disarming about Alex's easygoing nature. It was as if nothing could faze him, not even being caught in such an awkward situation. But the moment didn't last. As they continued their conversation, Zenara's curiosity got the better of her. Alex, she said hesitantly, I've heard rumors about humans. About your tools. Alex nearly choked on his drink. Rumors? What kind of rumors? Zenara hesitated, but Trivex's words echoed in her mind. That they're used for communication rituals. Alex stared at her for a moment, then burst out laughing. Communication rituals? Oh, that's rich. Who told you that? A friend. Zenara muttered, embarrassed. So it's not true? Not even close, Alex said, still laughing. I don't know what kind of stories your people are telling, but I can assure you, we're not that weird. Zenara frowned. Then what are they for? Alex stopped laughing, his cheeks turning a faint shade of pink. I mean, they're for reproduction. Mostly. Mostly? Zenara tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. Alex cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Let's just say humans are versatile. But it's not like we go around showing them off on purpose. Zenara's frown deepened. Then why were you so unconcerned earlier? Alex shrugged. Because it's not a big deal to us. Humans don't put as much emphasis on modesty as some other species do. It's just how we are. Zenara nodded slowly, though her mind was still full of questions. Humans were far more complex, and far more confusing, than she had anticipated. As they finished their meal, Zenara couldn't help but notice the way Alex smiled at her, his expression warm and genuine. Despite the awkwardness of their earlier encounter, there was a sense of camaraderie between them now, a shared understanding that transcended their differences. And for the first time since joining the Harmony's call, Zenara felt a strange sense of connection, not just to Alex, but to the humans as a whole. They were bold, unpredictable, and utterly fascinating. And she couldn't wait to learn more. Zenara couldn't shake the thoughts swirling in her mind. Alex's nonchalance about the earlier incident baffled her, yet it also intrigued her in a way she didn't entirely understand. Humans were so unapologetically themselves, so different from her people, who valued restraint and decorum above all else. The way Alex laughed, the way he shrugged off embarrassment, it was disarming. She found herself thinking about him more than she cared to admit. Her duties eventually brought her to the maintenance hub, where she had to complete a diagnostics check on the ship's sensor arrays. But even as she worked, her thoughts drifted back to her earlier conversation with Alex. The casual way he'd explained human anatomy had left her with more questions than answers. And the more she tried to ignore them, the more persistent they became. She sighed, placing her tools down with a little more force than necessary. This wasn't normal. She was a professional, a trained engineer, and yet she couldn't focus on her work because of one awkward encounter. It didn't help that Trivex kept throwing sly comments her way, his amusement at her predicament evident in the subtle flick of his frills whenever they crossed paths. Later that evening, Zenara found herself walking toward Alex's quarters again, this time with a purpose. She told herself it was purely out of curiosity, that she just wanted to understand humans better for the sake of interspecies harmony. But deep down, she knew there was something more. Something she wasn't quite ready to admit, even to herself. When Alex opened the door, he looked surprised to see her. Zenara? Didn't think I'd see you again so soon. What's up? I have questions, she said, her voice firmer than she felt. About humans. Alex blinked, then grinned. Oh boy. This should be good. Come in. His quarters were just as she remembered, functional, but with a distinctly human touch. A few personal items were scattered about, giving the space a warmth that was absent in her own stark, minimalist quarters. She hesitated for a moment before sitting down, her tail curling around her leg. So, Alex said, leaning against the edge of his desk. What do you want to know? Zenara hesitated, her cheeks flushing a faint green. Earlier you said humans don't emphasize modesty as much as other species. Why is that? Alex tilted his head, thinking. I guess it's just part of our culture. Nudity isn't inherently bad or shameful to us, it depends on the context. We've got a lot of different customs, and not all of them are as strict as you might expect. But doesn't it make you feel exposed? Zenara asked, genuinely curious. Alex shrugged. Not really. I mean, sure, there are situations where it'd be awkward, but if I'm in my own space, who cares? It's just a body. Zenara considered this, her brow furrowing. That's such a strange perspective. My people would never. We view the body as something private, something to be protected. Different strokes for different folks, Alex said with a grin. That's the beauty of interspecies interaction, right? We all get to learn from each other. She couldn't help but smile at his easygoing nature. You make it sound so simple. Maybe it is, he said. Or maybe I'm just good at making things sound simple. They fell into a comfortable silence, the tension from their earlier encounters melting away. Zenara found herself relaxing, the weight of her embarrassment lifting as they talked. But as the conversation continued, she couldn't ignore the subtle undertones of attraction that lingered in the air. There was something about Alex, his confidence, his humor, the way he looked at her with genuine curiosity, that stirred feelings she didn't entirely understand. At one point, Alex leaned forward, his expression serious for the first time. You know, I think you're pretty brave. Zenara blinked, caught off guard. Brave? Me? Why would you think that? Because you're willing to ask questions, even when they're uncomfortable. That takes guts, he said. A lot of people wouldn't bother, they just stick to what they know and call it a day. But you're curious. That's a good thing. Her cheeks flushed again, and she looked away, her tail twitching nervously. I don't know if I'd call it bravery. I want to understand. And that's exactly why it's brave, Alex said. Most people are too scared to step outside their comfort zones. You're not. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She glanced up at him, her gaze meeting his, and felt a spark of something she couldn't quite define. It was both exciting and terrifying, a mix of emotions she wasn't used to feeling. As the evening wore on, their conversation drifted to other topics: engineering, their respective cultures, the challenges of life aboard a multi-species ship. But no matter where the conversation went, there was an underlying sense of connection, a growing bond that neither of them could deny. When Zenara finally stood to leave, she felt a strange mix of emotions. She was still curious, still full of questions, but there was also a warmth in her chest that hadn't been there before. As she stepped out into the corridor, she couldn't help but glance back at Alex's door, a small smile playing on her lips. Maybe humans weren't so strange after all. Or maybe they were. Either way, she was beginning to think that wasn't such a bad thing. Alex found himself staring at the ceiling of his quarters long after Zenara had left. Her curiosity about humans had been endearing, if not a little overwhelming at times. But the way her eyes lit up when she was fascinated, the subtle flick of her tail when she was nervous, those little details lingered in his mind more than he cared to admit. He shook his head, trying to focus on something, anything else. But the truth was undeniable. He enjoyed her company. More than he probably should. The next day, their paths crossed again in the engineering bay. Zenara was running diagnostics on the energy conduits when Alex walked in, his usual relaxed demeanor masking his own uncertainty. He didn't know if things were different now, or if he was imagining the faint tension between them. Either way, he wasn't going to let it stop him from saying hello. Hey, Zenara, he said casually, leaning against the nearest console. Busy day? She glanced up, her expression neutral but her tail twitching slightly. Not particularly. Just the usual checks. He nodded, then hesitated. About last night. I hope I didn't make things weird. I know I can be a little blunt. Zenara set down her tools and faced him, her gaze steady. You didn't. If anything, I appreciated your honesty. It's rare to find someone so open. Alex chuckled. Yeah, well, it's kind of a human thing. We're not great at keeping things bottled up. That's not a bad trait, she admitted, her voice softer than usual. It's refreshing. Their conversation drifted into familiar territory, the kind of easy banter that had become their norm. But underneath the words was an unspoken tension, a sense that both of them were tiptoeing around something they weren't quite ready to address. It wasn't until Zanara asked him a seemingly innocent question that the dam finally broke. "Do humans ever form connections with other species?" she asked, her voice careful but curious. Alex paused, caught off guard. "You mean, like friendships?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No. I mean deeper connections. Emotional. Intimate." He blinked, processing her words. "You mean relationships?" She nodded, her cheeks flushing a faint green. "Yes." Alex rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly aware of how small the room felt. "I mean, it's not unheard of. It's not exactly common, but it happens. Why do you ask?" Zanara looked away, her tail curling around her leg. "I've been wondering about the differences between us. How much they matter. Or don't." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, Alex didn't know what to say. He could sense the vulnerability in her tone, the way she was testing the waters without fully committing. And for the first time, he realized just how much courage it must have taken for her to say it. "I think differences can be a good thing," he said finally. "They make life interesting. And if two beings, care about each other, I don't think the details matter." Zanara looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "You believe that?" "Yeah," he said, his voice steady. "I do." The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was a silence filled with unspoken understanding, a shared acknowledgement of something neither of them had fully admitted until now. And when Zanara finally stepped closer, her movements hesitant but deliberate, Alex didn't pull away. "I don't know if this is right," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it feels different. In a way that's hard to ignore." Alex smiled, his own nerves melting away as he reached out to gently touch her hand. "Sometimes different is exactly what we need." Their connection, though tentative, was undeniable. And as they stood there, caught in a moment that felt both surreal and inevitable, the walls between them seemed to fade. It wasn't about their species, or their cultures, or the countless things that made them different. It was about the way they made each other feel, alive, understood, and seen. The sound of a nearby console beeping broke the moment, and they both pulled back slightly, laughing softly at the interruption. But the spark between them remained, a quiet promise of something more. In the days that followed, their relationship grew in ways neither of them had anticipated. There were moments of awkwardness, of course, like when the ship's AI picked up on their proximity anomalies and flagged it as a potential system error. But there were also moments of genuine connection, of shared laughter and quiet conversations that stretched late into the night. And while the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear: whatever challenges they faced, they would face them together. Because sometimes, the most unexpected connections were the ones that mattered most.